We're drawn to the shadows, aren't we? To the places where the official narrative frays and the unsettling realities begin to bleed through. It's in these spaces, the gaps between what's presented and what, that the most compelling human dramas unfold. The facade of normalcy, the meticulously constructed alibi, the illusion of innocence. These are the canvases upon which the truly disturbing portraits of human behavior are painted. Today, we're not just looking at crimes. We're dissecting the anatomy of deception, peeling back layers to expose the often unpalatable core beneath. You might think you understand the parameters, the rules of engagement. A crime is committed, an investigation follows, resolution is achieved. But what happens when the very foundation of that understanding is built on a lie? What happens when the victim is a phantom, the alibi a scientific impossibility, the prized object a worthless imitation? These aren't just puzzles to be solved, they are explorations into the labyrinthine corridors of the human mind, where motive and opportunity twist into grotesque shapes, often hidden in plain sight, obscured only by our own assumptions. Welcome to our channel. Today we have 7 gripping crime stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Each story is short but packed with a twist you won't see coming. Let's dive in. We'll probe the unsettling questions, examine the fractured narratives, and confront the chilling ingenuity that defines these cases. Prepare to question everything you think you know about the nature of crime, and perhaps the nature of reality itself. It began like any other missing persons report. A name, Eleanor Vance. An address, a concerned acquaintance, the usual details meticulously logged. Days turned into weeks. The apartment was a sterile environment, almost too perfect, as if staged. Her supposed workplace had no record. Friends mentioned were vague, their connections tenuous, like threads dissolving upon closer inspection. We pored over financial records that led to dead ends, digital footprints that evaporated. The pressure mounted, the media whispered of incompetence, but underneath it all, a different kind of unease was settling in. The unnerving suspicion that we weren't just failing to find Eleanor Vance. We were chasing a ghost, a meticulously crafted illusion. The search parameters widened, then contracted, focusing not on where she went, but if she ever. Each piece of evidence of her existence seemed to crumble under scrutiny, revealing itself as a carefully placed prop in an elaborate play. Her photographs had an uncanny quality, a lack of candidness. The few eyewitness accounts were inconsistent, suggestible. The twist wasn't a sudden revelation, but a slow, dawning horror. Eleanor Vance was a construct, a phantom limb of a crime yet to be understood. The real investigation became about the architect of this elaborate fiction, and the unsettling, profound emptiness at its core. Who would expend such effort to create a person only for them to vanish? The crime was brutal, efficient. A high-profile executive dispatched with cold precision in his secure penthouse. The suspect pool was predictably small, and one name rose to the surface almost immediately. A disgruntled former associate, publicly humiliated with a documented history of threats. Motive, means, opportunity. It all seemed to align until the alibi. He was at a charity gala, dozens of witnesses, time-stamped security footage, even a brief on-stage appearance. Airtight, unshakable. Yet, the lingering doubt, the gut feeling that he was involved, persisted. We re-interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every frame of the gala footage, searching for the flaw, the inconsistency. The alibi held. Every cross-reference, every technological verification confirmed his presence miles away from the crime scene at the exact moment of the murder. It was a perfect offense, almost too perfect. Then came the anomaly, a piece of forensic evidence from the crime scene. A hair follicle, genetically identical to our suspect, but with a cellular degradation pattern inconsistent with the timeline. The twist, when it surfaced, wasn't just a clever deception, it was a chilling leap into the uncanny valley. His alibi wasn't a lie, it was a duplicate, a clone, indistinguishable, performing his public duties while he, the original, enacted his revenge. The question then became, who else knew and what is the culpability of a perfect copy? The Serpent's Kiss, a masterpiece by an obscure Renaissance painter, was the crown jewel of the Atherton collection. Its theft was an international incident. Alarms bypassed, laser grids navigated, pressure plates untouched, a work of art in itself, this audacious heist. The media erupted. Experts lamented the loss of irreplaceable heritage. Insurance companies braced for a colossal payout. Our focus was on the perpetrators, their methodology, the potential black market buyers. We profiled an elite cadre of art thieves, those capable of such precision, such audacity. The pressure from collectors, from the cultural establishment, was immense. Every resource was dedicated to its recovery. We followed leads across continents, delved into the shadowy world of illicit art sales. Then, a whisper from an old informant, someone deep within the forgery circles. Not about the painting's location, but about its origin. The painstaking forensic analysis began, not on the empty space on the gallery wall, but on the museum's own acquisition records, on the minute details of its provenance. The twist wasn't that the thieves were brilliant, but that the object of their elaborate efforts, the painting that had captivated the art world for decades, was itself a masterful deception. The serpent's kiss stolen from the Atherton was a forgery, an exquisite one placed there years ago, perhaps by the museum's own curator to cover an earlier, quieter theft, or perhaps it had always been a lie. The crime was not the theft, but the enduring, celebrated fraud. Chapter 4. The file was inches thick, yellowed with age, the ink faded on witness statements. The Lakeside Strangler, a case gone cold for 2 decades. A scar on the department's record. I was assigned it as a matter of course, a fresh pair of eyes, a new perspective. I immersed myself in the details, the victimology, the geographical profiling, the failed leads. The original investigators had done their due diligence, but something was missing, a key insight, a pattern they hadn't discerned. I walked the crime scenes, trying to inhabit the mindset of the killer, to understand the perverse logic that drove him. The nights grew longer, the case files my only companions. Slowly, connections began to form, subtle links between seemingly disparate pieces of evidence. A particular knot used, a rare type of fiber, a victim selection criteria that hadn't been fully appreciated. I built the profile piece by painstaking piece, feeling a strange sense of understanding, of almost preternatural insight into the killer's psyche. The breakthrough, when it came, wasn't a piece of new evidence, but a chilling recognition. The patterns I was uncovering, the unique signature of the killer's mind, felt disturbingly familiar. The twist was an internal implosion. The meticulous reconstruction of the crime led not to an external suspect, but to a fragmented memory, a suppressed truth. The detective was the killer, the years of dormancy a psychological fugue, my obsession with the case a subconscious yearning for discovery or perhaps for punishment. Chapter 5. The downtown branch of Sterling National mid-morning. The response was textbook alarms blaring, patrol cars converging, news choppers already whirring overhead. 4 perpetrators, masked, armed, moving with practiced efficiency. They controlled the lobby, isolated the staff, and went straight for the vault. It seemed like a standard takeover, albeit a bold one. The initial reports suggested a significant haul, but as we began to process the scene, interview the shaken hostages, and review the security footage, inconsistencies began to emerge. The robbers knew the layout too well, their timing too precise, their knowledge of security protocols too intimate. They bypassed certain silent alarms, knew the vault's secondary locking mechanisms, even seemed to anticipate the response time of the first wave of officers. There was a calmness to their execution that belied the inherent chaos of such an event. We started looking not just at the robbers, but at the victims. The bank manager, overly distraught, the head teller, whose access codes were supposedly forced, the security guard, conveniently on a break. The twist wasn't that they had help, it was that the entire operation was orchestrated from the inside. The lead robber, unmasked in the secure corridor leading to the vault, was the branch's unassuming assistant manager, a man who had meticulously planned his own bank's demise, using external actors as mere pawns in his elaborate high-stakes game of betrayal. Chapter 6. The Harrington heiress, barely out of her teens, vanished from her family's sprawling estate. A ransom note followed, demanding an exorbitant sum, threatening dire consequences. The family was prominent, the media descended like vultures, and the pressure to secure her safe return was suffocating. We initiated covert surveillance, established communication channels with the supposed kidnappers, analyzed the linguistic patterns of their demands. The heiress, by all accounts, was a sheltered, somewhat fragile young woman, ill-equipped for such an ordeal. Her parents were distraught, their pleas for her release dominating the airwaves. But the kidnappers made mistakes, amateurish ones that didn't align with the sophistication of the initial abduction. The drop points were poorly chosen, the communication protocols sloppy. And then there were the heiress's own digital breadcrumbs, carelessly left behind or perhaps intentionally. A hidden blog detailing a desire for escape, for a different life. Purchases of burner phones and disguise materials made weeks before her disappearance. The twist unfolded gradually. The heiress wasn't a victim of a ruthless criminal enterprise, she was its architect. She had orchestrated her own kidnapping, a desperate, dramatic bid for freedom from a gilded cage, or perhaps a more cynical play for the ransom money itself, using accomplices she thought she could control. The crime was not against her, but her. Chapter 7. It was a lavish affair, the kind of party where fortunes were made and reputations unmade with a whispered word. Amidst the clinking glasses and forced laughter, a prominent businessman, Arthur Finch, suddenly collapsed, clutching his throat. The diagnosis was swift and chilling: acute poisoning. The drink in his hand, a vintage champagne, was identified as the delivery mechanism. The investigation immediately focused on the attendees: rivals, disgruntled partners, spurned lovers. Finch had made many enemies on his ruthless climb to the top. We meticulously reconstructed the evening, tracking who had access to Finch, who could have tampered with his glass. The suspects were numerous, each with a plausible motive, each denying involvement. The poison was rare, sophisticated, suggesting a premeditated act by someone with resources and a cold resolve. We examined the placement of glasses, the flow of servers, the interactions around the champagne fountain. Then, a small detail from a background party photo, almost overlooked. Another guest, a young journalist known for her aggressive exposés, holding an identical glass, standing near Finch moments before he took his fateful sip. She had been complaining of a headache earlier. The twist was subtle, yet devastating. The poisoned drink wasn't intended for Finch at all. He had, in a moment of absent-mindedness or perhaps a casual gesture, picked up the wrong glass, the one intended for the journalist who was getting too close to a different, far more dangerous truth. And so the curtain falls on these 7 chronicles of misdirection and revelation. What we've seen is that the truth is rarely a simple, unadorned thing. It's often buried deep, obscured by layers of fabrication, self-interest, or profound psychological complexities. The human capacity for deception, whether directed at others or even oneself, is a powerful, unsettling force. These stories remind us that behind every crime, there's a narrative, and that narrative is almost always more intricate, more disturbing than it first appears. The twist isn't merely a plot device, it's a reflection of reality's own penchant for the unexpected. The edge of your seat, as they say, is where genuine engagement happens, where the mind grapples with possibilities and the unsettling comfort of certainty is stripped away. We hope these glimpses into the darker corridors of human ingenuity and desperation have resonated, have perhaps made you look a little closer at the surfaces around you, questioning what lies beneath. The patterns are there if you know how to look. The tells, the inconsistencies, the subtle deviations from the expected script. That's where the real stories reside. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thrilling content. See you next time. We'll continue to explore the shadows, to dissect the intricacies of why people do the things they do, because understanding the crime means understanding the mind that conceived it. The abyss, after all, has a certain allure.